For our first writer, Vida Cross, before Vida read with us in January of 2016, she already had a long list of degrees and accomplishments, and she had published in many journals. And since she read with us, she found a publisher for her book of poetry, Bronzeville at Night. Isn't that a beautiful, it's an Archibald J. Motley painting. And I think she found that publisher thanks to someone who heard her here. And I don't know who that is, but thank you very much. She's also been featured at the Poetry Foundation and at the Chicago Library's Poetry Fest this past April. But here's why I love and admire her poetry. Her lines and her imagery is just as vivid and full of life as one of Archibald J. Motley's paintings. And what better place to host her than right here in this art gallery. So help me welcome Vida Cross.
Reverb back to me. I know that you can hear me. So the first slide. So the first slide from this slide of image projection that I sent to Waterline is of Archibald J. Motley himself. So just in case you didn't know what he looked like, that will help you. I have this book tab, but please bear with me. They're not in an order until I read this one. Okay, so the next one. And the next one. The next one. Okay, so this poem is based on this young lady over in the corner of the painting. She's in the very far corner of this book. And the book itself has people from the neighborhood of Bronzeville, it has children, and then it has parents, the parents of the kids. If you don't know Archibald J. Motley or Bronzeville, Bronzeville is in the city of Chicago, and it goes from State to the Lake, and from roughly 26th Street, maybe 35th Street, maybe 47th Street, depending on who's referencing it and at what time they're referencing it. It's made up of maybe 4 neighborhoods: The Gap, Kenwood, Oakland, those are 2, Douglas, and I think that's it. And it used to be the Black Belt, where Black people were sort of relegated in the city of Chicago. And as a result, it became the place of blues and jazz music. So Archibald J. Motley depicted that area in many of his paintings. So the first poem that I'll read is based on this painting. This painting is called Bronzeville at Night. This poem is called Bronzeville at Night. It's in 3 parts. 1, front yard. In city summers, we wait for the breeze from trains, rain, or slam doors. Summer turns war, sheer curtains are drawn, tulips parade. Touch the rose, the pain will repeat itself, repeat the healing. Showing off one bud, rounding pink petals, turned from Sunday dresses. Flower beds greeted me, furnished rooms overwhelmed me. I lie flowered to wet rest. 2, State Street. Spotting the woman's round rear in the window, Jack's Chicken Shack, the blue night's glow, the full street, a couple of red dresses, and 2 stoplights. Mr. Archibald J. Motley stood on the corner of 35th Street. The fat man dropped his head. I snuck onto the front stoop. Mr. Motley sketched dark lines. The fat man whistled, the tune of head snapping, shoe heels tapping, bent knees flapping. I sat still, hoping Mr. Mott would sketch me too. 3. Juke joint. Night calls, men away, night answers. The two meet, shaking up the joint. Bodies throb, jumping the rip, strip, whip of music. If you believe death, the crow has fallen, relieved of our city life. Next slide. This painting is, this next poem is based on this painting and the next one, next slide, and this painting. I had those two images in my mind as I wrote this piece, The Quilt Maker, just because I like the pattern of the squares. I like the quilted image, and it came to my mind often, just the pattern of the squares. So I wrote this poem, The Quilt Maker. The quilt maker makes each patch a comfort of touch, drawing in thread each square old/used, parts of path and place in the fabric. She draws in the thread, each thin piece joined to form the whole, each piece calm and repetitive. She's calm and repetitive. She makes a map of texture in a darkened, quiet bed, each velvet hair on the low curve of back. The preacher rests under the map of texture, each velvet hair on the low curve of back is a comfort of touch through peculiar knowledge. Here, the quilt maker makes the preacher, here with the quilt maker, the preacher knows to sleep it off, sober up, piece his life back together. Next. The next piece is based on this character right in the middle. And he's in several Motley paintings. He's actually a real life figure from the Bronzeville area and from the city of Chicago. He's a man who walked around with a chicken on his shoulder or on his head. And he was just a fixture. So I wrote this poem called The Witch Doctor. The witch doctor smelled of pee. The witch doctor had no teeth. The witch doctor wore rose-scented cologne bought from a 5 and dime. He owned a big old house, had kids he'd never seen. He walked the neighborhood and yelled at people for conversation. The witch doctor cooked after someone died, fed the mourners, and sat elbow to elbow in the living room with everyone else. He had a pet chicken that sat atop his shoulder. He wore a hat and let his white beard bloom. No one from the neighborhood bothered him. People said, "How do?" and "Yes, sir." "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so," if they knew his name. The witch doctor is known to have a few spells he's yet to use. And when the white social science social worker came round in his khakis and loafers to talk to the witch doctor, many of the neighbors gathered to listen. The social science social worker said, "How far did you go in school?" The witch doctor answered, "Man, why don't you go somewhere?" The crowd laughed. The social science sociologist began taking pictures. To this, the witch doctor bowed, and each time he bent over, he placed a rock taken from his pants pocket on the ground. And the social science social worker stood in the middle of a circle. The witch doctor chanted, "Ah shosho, ah lele, ah shosho, ah lele." The words meant nothing. What mattered was when the witch doctor began blowing dirt from the street into the social science social worker's face. Each time he said, "Ah," this meant you are blind. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, and next slide. So I took the one before with the new woman and this piece, and the next slide. Next slide. And next slide. So all of these have a nude image in them, and I sort of combined them all in one poem called Bodacious. She'd walk up and take the sandwich from your hand, to feed her kids. She'd wear red round her rear on Sunday to Sunday service. Her lips were painted red. Her nails were painted red. She made looking away from you look easy and telling you off easier. She boldly walked into church and kissed the preacher's cheek. She laughed loud and folded money into her bra. She's the reason the witch doctor wore rose-scented cologne. The painter had to paint her, he said, nude, and she allowed him to follow her around for days. He knew she drank beer and smoked cigarettes. He knew she lived in a graystone on St. Lawrence Avenue with her mother. Her mother babysat her kids. She shopped once a month at Marshall Fields and paid extra to have things delivered. The father of two of her three boys was Robert King, one of Big Daddy King's sons from the King's Report. The painter painted her by looking into her window. He painted her while she undressed in another room, and half her body, including one butt cheek, was exposed. He painted her under the light of a shaded lamp, wearing only pumps, brown skin, and milk beneath her pores. So I won't use any more slides. I'll finish up with a few poems referencing the young people in the book, and signal to me when the time is up. This next poem is called Extortion Social, and it's based on some research that Langston Hughes did, where at Heavenly Rainbow Baptist Church on the corner of 35th and South Park, Chicago, when Tuesday evening, 8 p.m., June 25th, 1949, admission 5 cents, benefit sponsored by Rainbow Wives, bring lots of pennies, come after 8, 2 cents, come before 8, 2 cents, come after 9, 3 cents. Second plate, 2 cents. Take a plate home, 3 cents. Fill two too many plates, 2 cents. Water, 1 cent. Coffee, 2 cents. Tea, 3 cents. Punch, 4 cents. If you don't want water, coffee, tea, or punch, 4 cents. Leave to smoke a cigarette, 3 cents. Children are not allowed. Sent home with children, 2 cents per child. The book is not just fun. It's also, from the children's lives, a little sad. And the next poem is called Out in the Ocean, again, from the young girl's perspective from the painting, Out in the Ocean. My mother said I was born in April. I have to trust her on this. You were a colorless, unnamed, babbling pool of water. She added, distinguishing me from my two sisters, the wide-eyed owl, Marlene, and baby Jesus asunder. You were a trickle of water. You looked up from a momentary shyness before moving out into the ocean. Asunder, she said boldly, was ideal, quiet, obedient. My mother waited until Asunder spoke at 3. At 5, we searched for her for 4 hours in a park, 7 acres of flat land, houses on the edge, quick steps around swings, sand pits. Marlene scanned the area, called Asunder, a name that didn't belong to anyone at the time. Marlene's breath, a drop of air, added to the breeze. My mother wondered out loud how she'd describe her black child's dirty blonde hair and green eyes to the cops, while she refused to admit the cops were needed. Then Asunder limped away from an opening at the gated edge. She simply said, "I got lost." I said, "How?" under my mother's loud words meant for the Lord to hear. At home, I washed Asunder. I dripped soap and water over her matted hair. Asunder folded her lips together. I thought, I am nothing like water. It cleans, then forgets to keep us clean. It is gentle, but forgets to remain gentle. The last piece that I'll read is called Asunder 1. It's in 2 parts, I think. No, 3 parts. 1. Asunder cupped her fingers to hold her childhood back, not let it move between her. She said, "The way I feel right now, I feel like climbing under the bed, leaving parts of myself standing so as I can eavesdrop on what I've said. I'm always afraid of simple things, dropped pennies, the dark, silence, drinking milk whole. It's all just the beginning of what I can't control." 2. There is a spell to protect a child, blackberries, and Mama thought to buy them but bought a new dress instead. She figured she'd pray an extra prayer. She'd wrap us in black for a week. The color would remind her to buy blackberries. 3. Spell to protect a child. Use blackberries. Rub on feet or face. Let child bathe in blackberries. Let child play in blackberries. That's it. Thank you.